Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Hello, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 129 of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios, Andrew. I've come for your head, fat man, Zumwalt.
Yep, that was the one that I thought was really funny, and I was going to say that. So.
Sorry.
You think you're the first? You think I got this job because I'm fat and jolly?
There you go.
There.
Much better. Second, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions. What kind of godforsaken concoction are you whipping up now? You know how this fancy food clogs my pipes?
Yikes. Yeah. Happy holidays, everybody.
Third, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films. Tom, I'll give you $900 or you can fuck off, Haggis.
Hey, kids, there's no limit to what I can do. I can replace your parents.
Fourth, writer, actor, and director Kyle. Was drop kicking him into the manager really the best way to handle this? Fine.
Ho, ho, ho. Thank you, Andrew, for segueing me. This job I actually did get because I'm fat and jolly.
All right. Well, this is the start of our 12th year, right, guys? We were just talking about it. Someone help me. Yes, 12th year. And we're kicking it off with, well, two holiday films that don't go by the book. So let's poke the monkey.
Ladies and gentlemen, cantankerous Kringles and mirthless monsters, welcome to the main event! Tonight, two twisted Christmas tales go toe-to-toe. Which will slay the holiday, and which will end up on the naughty list? In the first quarter, from 2020, written and directed by Ian and Esham Nelms, starring Marianne Jean-Baptiste, Walton Goggins, and Mel Gibson. Fatman! In the second quarter, from 2015, written by Todd Casey, Michael Doherty, and Zach Shields. Directed by Michael Doherty. Starring David Koechner, Adam Scott, and Tony Collette. Krampus!
All right. I was pleasantly surprised by both of these films. I actually found myself enjoying them. I didn't know what to expect. I think I was going in a little cautious about it, although I love Walton Goggins. So I was really wanting to watch him in a film. But the rest of the cast and then the other film, I was very unsure of. But I have to say, I was surprised. So what do you guys think? Let's move on to our first round, which is writing.
So let's start with the good. It's kind of tough. Okay, so we'll start with Krampus. Actually, we'll start with both movies. I give these movies a lot of credit for being different. They don't feel really like any other movie. They obviously have some sensibilities about them that you can say, oh, that's similar, or that's, that feels a bit like, but they are original movies. They're not remakes. They're not, reissues. They're not, anything like that. They have been, they are completely original ideas. So I will give them a lot of credit for that. My problem with both of these movies, and it may be something you hear repeated, is that I feel like they had really good ideas and they didn't quite nail them. Being said, that I think especially Fatman is a really interesting idea for a film. It's very different. It's very new in its kind of feeling and approach. And I really liked the idea of Fatman much more than the execution. And I feel like it's a movie that could have been rewritten at least once more, if not more. And seeing its budget afterwards really made me think, yeah, they really missed something here in not streamlining this and really highlighting the things that were most important, because it got very wandery at points and it focused on a lot of things that I think were not necessarily important. Krampus is another interesting sort of original style story that focuses on, a lesser known aspect of the lore. But again, I think it also could have had some rewrites to streamline it and focus it more. There were definitely some problematic aspects, but I give both these movies, both of them, a lot of credit for being original ideas.
See, and that's funny because when I was going through them, I was amazed at like how good the acting and the production values were. Because a lot of times when you get movies like this, that's kind of where things fall off. Mm-hmm. And so I started to wonder, well, maybe it's the writing that was the problem, and the execution was like they were executing a bad script with, I guess it's kind of like what you were saying. But I think that, both of them had just really original ideas. I felt Batman's was a lot more original. Krampus has been done before, and it's a myth that's been around for 200 years more. So, I don't know. I was really surprised how much I was going to like. I was dreading this episode, but I'm looking for a copy of Fatman on Blu-ray. So, but I'm not going to pay full price for it.
Yeah, I think that Fatman kind of suffered with some tone problems. Like, what was the tone? What were they going for here? Because at times it was really dark and pretty violent. And sometimes, in the modern day and age, some of the scenes kind of made you a little bit uncomfortable. Like when he goes into the toy factory and he starts shooting up a workplace and people are running, it's like, okay, it's a little bit uncomfortable. And sometimes I felt like they were trying to go for dark comedy. And other times I thought they were kind of going for kind of like action or something. And I felt like they just didn't really nail the tone and get it quite right. Because and I think if they had spent a little more time on that, it could have really raised the quality of the movie even more. But I do agree with you, Tom, in that the production value on both of these movies was pretty high, much higher than I expected, honestly. I think there were also some issues. I think that the camera, I don't know how to put it, like the lighting and stuff in Fatman was okay, but I'm not sure that they always had the best shot choices. There was something about like some of the angles and some of the shot choices that I just didn't really feel like lived up. But I thought the cinematography and the lighting and everything in Krampus was actually quite nice. I mean, they really handled a lot of the stuff where, like the darker scenes and that kind of stuff where you still could see what was going on. but you got this kind of feeling of cold and dark. I remember one scene in particular which really shouldn't stand out at all, but I think they came across that snowplow, and this is not acting, is it? Or writing. This isn't writing. I'll save this for later. But I think Krampus, the writing to me seemed derivative. It seemed it was kind of like Christmas Vacation as a horror story, because it was like kind of the same characters. Like it was like all the same people showing up, and I'm like, I've seen these characters before. So I thought Krampus, the writing, it was also kind of very dark. And I think they had tone problems too. It's like, well, is this supposed to be a dark comedy, or what is this? At times it just had this really negative view of human nature, with everybody like trampling the people in the store and fighting with each other over, gifts and all that kind of stuff. And everybody was just an asshole. And I'm like, who are we supposed to like in this? And but anyway, I just felt like maybe they had kind of tone problems too. It's like didn't quite get what we were looking for out of those. I don't know. I'll let you. Yeah,
like is Krampus coming for all of us? With the open, it was just kind of like well, we're all kind of screwed then if we all feel like this was about Christmas. So
right.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been more if it's opened with like, look how nice and wonderful Christmas is, and then juxtaposed it with, but these guys are fucking assholes.
Right.
But if you're just like, this is just another shitty family at Christmas, we're like, well, then Krampus is going to be busier than Santa.
Yeah, these guys are not the worst family. And I mean, yeah, what you say about them being Christmas Vacation, but slightly different, is really accurate, especially when it comes to the visiting in-laws. Heather even said this.
Same characters.
Yeah, Heather actually said, this is like Cousin Eddie. I said, yeah, no, it really is. It really is.
Exactly. Even
it's exactly like that.
Kyle, I'm surprised you didn't find the fact that this movie was written based off of the Australian holiday of Krampus Snatch. Because Krampus Snatch. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what Krampus do.
I guess there's a couple of things about Krampus that I'll throw out that I thought were interesting. I felt that the theme started off with all of the evil and just angry people, and of course that's basically what the Krampus Snatch holiday is about. Is he comes and he takes all of the naughty children, and so it felt like they were trying to theme it out of these are all the bad people and these are all the nasty, crazy people during Christmas, and that's what we're focusing that theme on. But it kind of drifted, and I don't know if it got lost or because I mean, what the boy, all he did was he didn't want his parents, and Home Alone did that, but he didn't. He just got left, I guess. So I don't know if they were trying to go with the be good for goodness sake kind of feel, because I thought that's where we started, but then that message kind of got lost throughout. However, I do want to point out one thing I really did like about the movie that is not normal for Hollywood type movies, especially Christmas ones, is the fact that the movie did not end happy. And I appreciated that, because a lot of times, a holiday film, we have to basically go through something and then everybody ends up, redeeming themselves. And this movie ended and it was not a happy ending. They were all stuck in their snow globe forever with all the other bad people. And I thought that was actually pretty awesome that they didn't happy it up, that it was sad and angry.
I agree that I like that twist ending. I love stuff like that, but these people did not deserve that.
And again, but that's where I think that that loss of where was the story going, because it felt like they started off with, these are all the terrible people. Look at how they fight, and all they care about is presence, and they're punching and kicking and pulling and whatever. And then it ended up somehow that these guys were the worst of the worst. I don't know. That's why I said that, like, I don't know. The thread started, but then it just completely spun out of control and felt like more of a horror movie. So I don't necessarily say it was just, I just enjoyed the fact that it was different than most would consider, because a lot of times they always try to go for that happy ending. Real quick on Fatman, I think the idea was very unique. The writing had holes in it, and I think they tried for some comedy that kind of fell flat. I've seen the chance, Billy's type of character before, and it's kind of like, yeah, we've seen the over white privileged rich kid that is actually evil, but he pretends to be super nice to his grandma and all. Like, I've seen this character before, so it felt almost like it was they were putting blocks in a hole. I know, I'm sorry, Mike. I ended up being long because I didn't get, but so I enjoyed Fatman as well because of the originality, but it definitely was shaky in spots. So I'll leave it there. We can talk. Well, I'm sure we'll come back to some other stuff later anyway. So
I want to punch up one joke in Krampus, and that is, I want to steal the scene from Hunt for Red October, where Sean Connery is speaking Russian and they zoom in on his mouth, and all of a sudden you can hear him in English. I want to steal that for the grandma. I thought that would have been hilarious. Yeah. To just zoom in on her mouth and all of a sudden she starts speaking English. I'd be like, oh, they stole that. That's funny. But
I think that's a great idea.
It was just confusing.
It's another thing I think is interesting, and I don't know if this was planned or whatnot, but there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these Krampus movies.
Yeah.
8. And they're all under 4.
Yeah, there was a real big push for Krampus stuff about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
So something seemed, and maybe that made part of the forcedness of the writing, perhaps. Like, it didn't, you guys were talking about flushing it out, and maybe that is part of what hurt it, is that push. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what their writing process was, but it just seemed, yeah.
I mean, one of the biggest shocks in Krampus was the Universal logo at the beginning, where I was like, "Whoa, okay, so this is not, this isn't." Right. I was going to say A24, but they make good movies. I don't know.
Let's put
it was also a legendary film too. So
that
was.
But
I mean, is that Gibson? Who owns
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
not sure who owns.
I thought that was Mel Gibson as well. But Legendary Films also does a lot of potential semi-scary movies as well. So, but yeah, I thought Legendary was Mel Gibson's.
No, I guess not.
Nope. Okay.
Well, Thomas Tull. I don't know who the main producers are there.
So then Legendary just backed Mel Gibson for years on a lot of his movies.
All right. We're going to put it to a vote, fellas.
Sorry.
Kyle.
Mm-hmm. I had problems with both of these scripts. I think they both need to be worked on quite a bit. The one that disappoints me the most is Fatman, because I think it has the best ideas, but I think if you put them against each other, it's still better written. So I'm going to vote for Fatman.
All right. Gabe.
Yeah, I felt like Krampus was a little bit derivative, at least in the first part. It really felt like Christmas Vacation to me. I liked the originality of Fatman. I think they fell a little short in some places, but it's going to get my vote. Fatman for me.
All right. Andrew?
I'm voting for the piece of shit that wasn't quite as smelly, and that was somewhat made me chuckle, was Fatman.
All right. Tom?
Fatman.
Mine was harsh.
Yeah, yours was harsh. Omi was deaf in the first draft of Krampus as opposed to German, but they switched it in part for the cultural connection.
That was a good move.
From deaf to German.
I mean, that's pretty natural. But Krampus was Austrian.
Well, but they speak German in Austria.
Oh, well, I guess I can go with that.
Ian and Isham Nelms originally wrote the screenplay for Fatman in 2006 and had been shopping it around for over 10 years. There, as you can tell, there's not a lot of trivia for either one of these films, so my portion will be quick tonight. Let's move on to our second round, which is acting.
I think maybe Tom mentioned this at some point. It's really interesting to me how many decent actors are in these movies. I don't know. I guess I was kind of surprised at, how good, the acting talent was for these movies. How do you get Mel Gibson in a movie like Fatman? Okay. Well, okay, I'll give you that.
Right now?
I have a hard time with Mel Gibson now.
Yeah.
It's a little different. I have a hard time separating him as a human from his character on the screen. And maybe that's why they can get him now, because his jobs are, few and far between. But you would have to admit that at least at one time he was an A-list actor. And then a lot of the cast in Krampus is actually they're like really kind of pretty well known, respected, comedic actors. So I don't know what do you guys feel like they were kind of like, out of their league a little bit? Like the films were out of the league as far as like the acting talent that they actually got, or how do you think they got those actors?
Well, I think doing putting it together at Universal was a big part of it. I think when you get a big studio like that, you feel a little bit more secure,
right,
in the paychecks and that kind of things. I don't know.
I agree with you, Gabe. Sorry, who wants to go?
I was just going to say my one defense with Mel Gibson is Mel Gibson had his falling out in life and he did terrible things, and he at one point was an amazing actor, and I don't think he has lost that talent. I think people have lost their view of Mel Gibson because I think Gabe said it well, is that people can't separate what they know about him in real life versus his character. But I also go back and I look at what is their talent versus necessarily what directly they're doing. Like, if they've murdered somebody and they're doing stupid stuff, like, there is a limit to it. But, people talk how terrible Tom Cruise is as a person in real life, but people will love watching Mission Impossible with him in it and action movies with him in it. Some people, I won't say everybody, I apologize for that. There are other actors that do stupid shit in life. And, Robert Downey Jr., he had a huge stint where he was out and then he came back as Iron Man and just blew everybody away and rebuilt his life and his career. I'm not saying Mel Gibson is rebuilding his career, but he is a good actor. And I can't say he did a bad job. He fit the character well with this kind of nonchalant character of Santa that he played, and so I felt that it was well for him. Personal life aside, he's probably not your first pick for anything, but I don't know. I would say that the one actor that stands out of all of these, Marie Jean-Baptiste, I think is how you say her name correctly. She was fabulous and was probably top-notch acting in both of these movies put together. Like, she was fantastic.
She was very genuine.
Yeah,
She seemed very, very believable, likable, and genuine as that character.
She was just really good. So
she is a good actress. I've seen other things with her in it, and she's a very talented actress. I agree with. I think it was Tom who mentioned, or was it Andrew who started this? Sorry,
I did.
Sorry. So Gabe. So
I started
was wrong.
all this nonsense.
The third person, actually. The acting talent on these movies outshined the quality of these movies, writing, and the outcome. The person I felt was wasted the absolute most was Toni Collette, who is a phenomenal actress and was given very little to do other than to be a worried mom. We talked about tone and that being a problem, especially with do these people deserve all this punishment? You have an actor like David Koechner, who is more than capable of becoming an absolute scumbag, and they really kind of gave him a kind edge and didn't lean into it. He wasn't even kind of a cousin Eddie, like lovable buffoon. He was just a dick, and then not a dick, and then a dick, and then not a dick, and it was really uneven. Walton Goggins, to me, by far, is the best actor in these movies, and he is enjoying the absolute shit out of what he's doing. The director said, do whatever the fuck you want, and he goes, you fucking got it, buddy. And he did it. And the thing is, Walton Goggins is amazing, but if you're going to do this with Walton Goggins, cut the kid out of the story.
Yes.
Because if you're going to spend this much time with Walton Goggins, letting him do this shit, make him a crazy, unhinged man who just goes and does this.
And he potentially had his own motivations to do it.
He had his own motivation already.
He didn't need that kid. He needed the kid's money, maybe. You know, maybe that's...
Yeah, but you could have shown him being a successful hitman or like you could even wrap a lot of the military shit into Walton Goggins' character, because that military stuff pretty much went nowhere other than to give people bodies to pile up at the end.
Yeah, but I think you need it is at the core of a movie about Santa Claus. So you got to have kids. I mean, there's got to be a kid. I don't know if you can
He was a kid at one time.
Yeah, I think you can lean into that and make that.
He had revenge on his soul since he was a kid, and that drove him. I mean, he was looking for toys that were marked. He was collecting. There is enough motivation behind him that he could have been the sole protagonist. I agree 100% with that.
Antagonist.
I mean, sorry.
I think if you roll the kids,
I was excited.
I'm
sorry.
No, Santa's the bad guy.
Yeah, if you roll the kid's purpose in the movie into Walton Goggins, the movie becomes much better. That's just my opinion.
I don't know. I won't say you're wrong, but I think I do agree that Walton Goggins was the best acting in both movies. Every time he came on, I was looking forward to it. I wasn't real thrilled about the montage of him driving north with the view from the back seat, but that's more of a direct we'll get into. It was just weird, and
there's probably one or two too many of those.
I drive a lot, and I was just kind of like, I don't know, it was kind of weird. And then, and I'm sure it was expensive too. I don't know how they paid for all of those little cuts of music.
I thought about that too when it was going. I'm like, they're spending a lot of their budget on the rights to these songs.
The budget on Fatman was very surprising when I looked it up.
The one person I want to tip my hat to is Adam Scott in Krampus, because and this might actually wind up being like a flaw of the movie, but like when all the shit starts going down, he provides some really comedic incredulity. Oh fuck! It would have been so awesome.
Incredulity.
That he just couldn't believe everything that was going on. Just you got to be kidding me, and come on. So those were really, really funny, and like you guys have said, maybe that undercut the tone of the movie a bit. And you kind of have this horror movie going on, but I don't know. I think I like that because, like I said, I'm not a big horror fan. So whenever they were trying to like push it back to like, hey, remember this is a comedy too, that they're being attacked by a Jack in the Box. That, I thought Adam Scott did a really great job there, and I'm glad they left that stuff in.
Yeah, he's another guy who is a really talented comedic actor and could have done much more with the stuff. If he wanted to change some things up, I think he's flexible enough to do that. And would have been really good, but he's a pretty good straight man too. I mean, I think he's just a good actor overall.
Yeah. I wish he'd do a lot more, but
for sure.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was. I mean, there's so many great people on Parks and Rec, but I mean, he did play the straight on Parks and Rec against all the other loony characters really well.
Yeah, he's very, very good at that.
Except when his loony would show. Right, like that made it even better.
Oh, like the Game of Thrones chair and Thrones of Dunshire
and Batman and yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Are you guys done talking about acting? Is there anything else you would like to add before we vote? No? All right.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, wait.
I was just gonna say, I think Fatman is better if it's Walton Goggins versus Mel Gibson. That's just my opinion.
Okay. All right. Let's put it to a vote then, Gabe.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that I was like fully decided. I do like Walton Goggins. I think his performance suffered a little bit from the tone problems. Like what are we going for here? Are we going for dark comedy, or are we going for like creepy, scary? I don't know. And Mel Gibson, I like from an acting standpoint. But all that being said, I think I'm going to go with Krampus on this one.
Oh, all right, Andrew.
Yeah, Fatman.
All right.
Yeah, I'm never going to beat around that.
Tom.
One.
Yeah, Walton Goggins wins it for Fatman for me.
All right. Mm-hmm. And Kyle.
Walton Goggins, the one-man gang.
All right. One of the hamsters used to play Walton Goggins' pet in Fatman also features prominently in the COVID-19 drama Belated Days. There you go.
What?
Yes.
The same hamster?
The same hamster.
How long do they live?
Oh, they live a few years. I used to have
hamsters as a kid. An elderly hamster.
Yeah.
Well, enough to make their owner some money.
Krampus's storyboard artist was drawing David Ketchner into the drawings before the actor had even been considered or cast.
That's kind of funny.
Because Randy Quaid's hiding in Canada.
That's correct. Yeah. Wearing his tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
All right. Third round, directing.
I'm going to talk about the lesser known because Michael Dougherty and Krampus as a director kind of surprised me with some of the things that he's done. So I'm going to start with the Isham and Ian Nelms that did Fatman. So it's very notable that they haven't done a lot of big full features. In fact, they've only done 4. They do a lot of stuff together. Fatman had its interesting choices, but I have to say that out of all the stuff that they pulled off, and this may not just be directing, it may also be with stunts and your cinematography and stuff, but the ending, the whole back and forth tension that they built with Mel Gibson and Walton at the very end between the log piles and in the snow and the back and forth and the creaking and just the way that they played that out, I thought was well thought out and well choreographed, and gave some sense of fun, tension, and kind of crazy over the topness that was going on. Walton's character was pretty much at his wit's end at that point, and so was Mel Gibson as Santa, and then his wife in the cabin or in their house, and then you had the elves, and like it was just this kind of conglomerate of all the things coming in, and I thought that was probably my favorite part of the entire movie. The little snippets, we've already talked a little bit about them, but with Walton kind of doing his thing, were quite fantastic. All the stuff with the kid was just kind of, I guess derivative is maybe the right term. I don't know. It just seemed kind of unnecessary and was just kind of like, okay. Yep. Seen this before. Yeah. So we can definitely touch back on those two. The one thing I thought was interesting with Krampus, with Michael Dougherty is, he also has not directed a lot of features. He has actually only directed 3 features, but he's written a lot more movies, and surprisingly enough, wrote not only King of the Monsters, Godzilla King of Monsters, but he wrote this latest one, Godzilla versus Kong, which I thought was quite impressive because I really enjoyed Godzilla versus Kong much more than I enjoyed Krampus. Now, granted, I don't know if he was just kind of, because it looks like he did Trick or Treat, which is also a horror type style movie, but he also did an Urban Legends, which those are all, but he did X2, X-Men United, the second X-Men of the old cast, and he also did Superman Returns. He did the screenplay and the story for that. So he's done some pretty big films, and X-Men Apocalypse, it looks like, so he's done some bigger films as a writer, and it seems like he is more successful in the story writing perhaps than he was in the directing. I think we've talked a lot about tone with Krampus. There was just pieces like the one that was really weird, I think, to me, was when we did Granny's flashback and it became a Tim Burton-esque stop motion kind of thing. I thought that was really weird. I don't know if that was a director's choice or I don't know. It just kind of pulled out of where we were. I don't know. That seemed odd. And there was nothing fantastical that I noticed that perhaps he did. I don't know if we talk about it, but I mean, the one saving grace I thought was really cool was there were some really cool visual effects and really cool makeup that was done in Krampus with some of the toys, and Krampus himself was a very detailed, very, very fascinating monster that was designed. So I thought that was kind of cool, but I'll quiet so that way you guys get a chance to jump in.
Yeah, piggyback on some of that stuff. The best things in Krampus are the creature design and the way those are shot and put together. I think that stuff is really good. Actually, the flashback is really out of place, but I love the style of it. Mm-hmm. And
I would agree with that.
I'd have rather seen this movie in that style at some point. Than,
I was going to say the same thing, Kyle. I think I would have enjoyed the movie, the entire movie being like that.
Yeah, that's hard because I think some of the actors are really good, and I would hate to miss some of the.
That's true.
The practical effects, I think, are great. The monsters and stuff were by far my favorite part of Krampus. Tone. Damn, that's, I beat it in the ground. I know I sound like a broken record sometimes, but it's so important to me for a movie to have cohesive tone. And if you're gonna shift tones, that is hard. It's not an easy thing that every director can do. And most directors who try it, aren't necessarily successful at it. So it takes a good director to pull that off. And I think that let these movies down for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's that's one of the things that movies, like really successful movies, seem to just, rather than shifting tone, the really good movies can actually skirt and kind of play to 3 different genres at the same time. And I mean, it's a bitch for the marketing department. And you always know those movies where you watch the trailer and you're like, that's not really what the movie was about. And they don't know how to design a poster for it because it doesn't fit in a little box and that kind of thing. So I feel like sometimes that shift in tone is like an editing choice so that you get two separate kinds of movies. Sunshine did that too, but it's tough because I don't know. I think the truly great movies are movies that just kind of are without a home in a particular genre. Those are the movies I like the most. So.
Yeah, if the tone of your movie is Shaun of the Dead and that's the whole tone, right? Like it doesn't have a name or discernible style, but you weave it together, that's perfect. But it's so rare. I feel like Fat Man would have, this is going to sound harsh, I'm sure, but Fat Man would have been a much better movie if it would have been rewritten and had different directors. Because the idea, and you can keep even the same actors, for the most part, but the idea of it deserved a better execution.
I would agree with that, and maybe again that is the youngness of the directors that were put onto this project that were, the inexperience, let's say, big feature films with big actors and stuff, and I'm sure it was an exciting adventure, and I'm sure that everyone's got to take those steps, and I'm not dogging any of that, but the inexperience, you could have gotten a different movie with a more honed director, I would think, even with the same story.
Yeah, but there's at the same time though, there's a risk for a movie like this.
Sure, and I would agree.
And I don't know if this is the kind of movie a seasoned director would take on.
And that may be true.
But dear Lord, how fun would Fat Man be with the Coen brothers behind it?
Oh God, yeah.
Oh Lord.
Shit, that
Seriously,
would be such a great movie.
Yes.
I would love to see a Quentin Tarantino Fat Man.
And
oh my God, yeah.
Oh yeah, he'd definitely be wearing a red suit at the end.
Well, and there was
a
lot of moments that you could very easily see as being wanting to be at Tarantino, where it's very close quarters in one place, a lot of action, a lot of dialogue happening, where you could see that kind of thing could easily be portrayed by Tarantino pretty easily. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Gabe, I don't want to take away from Gabe, but sorry, Tom.
No, there and that's one of the things with when I'm watching Fat Man, that there is you know what movies these guys have watched over the last 20 years. I mean, there's no direct homages, but there's a style and an editing flow and some choice angles and stuff that they really laid it out there, and you know their background from it, and I appreciate it because they're the same movies that I've watched the last 20 years. So,
and it's amazing that they actually directed and they wrote it, and that's sometimes very difficult because it's hard to step away from being able to direct and be like, no, that's not the story. That's not the way I want.
And that may also be one of its flaws, is that they couldn't hand it off to somebody else that would be able to take it. So, but they have this movie like this has a vision.
What was that? The one you said they shopped around for like 10 years?
Yeah.
I mean, God, can you imagine the dedication to a movie like that for 10 years? That's some dedication.
Was it that 10 years I wrote this script and we're the only ones that can direct it? We know it. We've done it. We've, was it such a passion that they had to just do everything?
Well, and it kind of reminds me of Shoot 'em Up. I really enjoy Shoot 'em Up, but that dude, he shopped that around for 10 years. He had all the animatics. He was an animator. He had all the animatics done. And yeah. Just,
I mean, it's
dedication.
It's like they say in Babe, a great idea will never leave you alone.
Yeah.
The bad ideas, you'll forget them in a week, but the good ideas will stick around for years.
Yep.
So,
all right, Gabe, would you like to add anything to directing?
Well, I just wanted to give a shout out. In this category, we often talk about cinematography, and I was talking about that earlier in the wrong category. I got way off track. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the cinematographers of both of these films because, again, like the actors that they landed, I think the cinematography kind of was better than expected, at least for me. And I just wanted to mention that one scene in Krampus where they come across the snowplow, and they've got, it's basically all dark except for like lights on the snowplow and their flashlights. And I was just like, I thought to myself, this is a scene that like the cinematography most people wouldn't notice. But I thought to myself, it's like, I want to figure out how to get a shot like that. How do you get a shot like that where it's like everything is mostly dark, but you can still clearly see everything that you need to see in the shot. I was just kind of fascinated with that shot for whatever reason. But Krampus is actually full of a lot of good shots. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the cinematographers of both of these films because it was pretty good.
All right.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think when the power goes out, I'm sure the cinematographer in Krampus was like, "All right, now I'm doing my work."
Oh, yeah, here we go. I get to play with
Lose
the
the
lights.
practicals. Yeah.
All right. Let's put it to a vote, Andrew.
Oh, I go first now?
Yep.
Oh, who we kidding? I'm going for Fatman.
All right, Tom.
Batman.
Kyle.
This is kind of a spite vote because I really wish these guys would have let someone else do this. So I'm going to vote for Krampus.
All right.
Oh!
Gabe.
Oh!
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Krampus as well.
Okay.
Well, you can't always be right, guys. I get it.
At the beginning of Krampus, the TV in the kitchen is showing a news broadcast with the scroll saying Season's Greetings. Season's Greetings was a 1996 animated short film directed by Michael Dougherty that introduced Sam, the demonic Halloween spirit from Dougherty's cult classic Trick or Treat from 2007.
He's doing Trick or Treat too.
The climactic shootout sequence took 4 days to film, with the temperature hitting as low as 36 below 0 Celsius for Fatman.
Wow. Where did they shoot that at then?
Canada.
Oh.
There's always snow in Canada, right? They can shoot. Shoot a Christmas movie year round.
Shoot year round.
Well, after I read that and put it down, I'm like, well, it kind of makes sense. If you're shooting it, wintertime, your days are going to be so much shorter.
Oh yeah, well,
so
yeah,
your
geez.
available light, you're going to have to match that light. So you're only going to have, so many hours to shoot something.
Now I want to go back and watch for more continuity problems in that scene because that.
I thought they did a pretty good job. Yeah,
that's what I mean, to organize that.
Yep.
That's impressive.
There were a couple shots where it went from cloudy to direct sunlight, and it didn't match, between the cuts. But I'm like, who cares? I was paying attention to the snow on the ground. Right? Like they did a really good job of not showing anyone else's tracks or showing snow that would have been, walked on or anything like that. Like I thought they did a really good job with that.
I've always worried about if I ever were to shoot in the snow, worrying about crew walking around and things like that and being able to make sure your continuity doesn't get ruined by crew.
Right.
Because I think that would be a very strong challenge.
I've dealt with it and it sucks.
Yeah. I mean, and there's other things, mud and sand that also can potentially do that. So, tip of the hat for that. So
tip of the hat. All right. Fourth and final round overall.
This is going to be one of those times where we kind of go back to which one are we going to watch more often going forward? Like, which are these movies going to get added to the Christmas rotation? And I can tell you that I'm pretty sure Fatman's going to get added to my Christmas rotation right after Die Hard. It's a good Christmas movie to bring it up. I don't know if I'll watch Krampus again. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. It was an incredibly, it was a horror movie, but it was also very silly. But I don't know if I would ever get past a lot of the questions I have about, where is everybody? And like, I know that they're in a snow globe at the end, but it was, even from the very opening credits, it just seemed like there was a problem with trying to fit this story into, why we should be decent people at Christmas. Fatman, on the other hand, I thought I really enjoyed the the story and the effort to kind of tell the Santa Claus story from a different angle, and the acting in it. I'll begrudgingly admit that Mel Gibson was great, and there's several people supporting characters that also did a really great job. One thing I wanted to talk about is the score in Fatman that the Mondo Boys did was really great. And usually when you guys start talking about score in movies, I kind of tend to quiet because it's not really anything that jumps out at me when I'm watching a movie. I don't usually notice the score until the third or fourth time I've watched it. But I love what the Mondo Boys did, taking these Christmas songs and like adapting them and putting in some, there's some spaghetti Western stuff in there and some like 70s synthesizer. And it was really well done, but there's still at the heart and the core of these songs are these Christmas songs, is that are kind of just given a little twist on. And I'm disappointed there's no Fatman soundtrack that I can find, because I think that would be a fun one to add. But let's see, I was reading too that the Mondo Boys, they only agreed to do the movie as long as there would be a track called the cold backhand of Father Christmas. And the directors were like, yeah, okay, you can do a track cut like that. So I don't know. And then I also like special effects. I know that's usually directing. We talk about that. One of the things I liked about Fatman was they didn't show you anything that didn't need to be seen. And when what's his name, Skinny Man goes in and kills the postmaster. I mean, the shot, just the two flashes from outside the frosted glass, and he walks out. I mean, they did a really great job of only showing you what you absolutely needed to see. And Krampus, I think, kind of failed with that, because I think the character designs were cool, but they still had a, like, I don't know, 1980s Labyrinth feel to them, where I was just like, this doesn't really feel like a movie that came out 5 years ago. It seemed a lot, some of the puppeteering was a little more dated than I would expect. But I mean, kudos for going with practical puppets rather than special, CGI stuff. So I can admire that. But the Fatman, the choices of Fatman to just show you what you need to see and cut some corners, but in a way that doesn't take away from the story, I thought is commendable.
If I may interject real quick, it's funny you bring that up, Tom, because Michael Dougherty was wanting to use the 1980s Universal logo at the beginning of the film. Oh, really? Yes.
So just like set expectations at the beginning, so people were like,
"Yep."
Very clever. Very clever. And Universal was like, no, we're going to make you a frosty one just for your movie. And possibly Santa Claus 5.
And the 8 other Krampuses.
Yes, and the 8 other Krampuses.
I think that's a really good point, a really good call out actually on Fatman. Because even at the climax, there wasn't really a huge like special effects or glowing or of all of that when Mel Gibson actually gets up, and it felt real for a fantasy type thing that would happen, and they didn't make it out to be this like you didn't see the magical bullet pop out and all the goo and everything grow back, and like they made it very, he was hurt and he was injured and he was still being bandaged while he was healing. He wasn't this god like thing. So I thought that now that you say stuff like that you're spot on. Even when the elves were freaking out, they did a good job of again making that choreograph of that big climax not over the top with effects and explosions and booms and bloods and guts and everything. So
and that's one of the scenes too, when he comes out to let the elves know that the military contract's coming through. I'm watching it and I was just like, well, this doesn't really seem like the kind of movie where we're going to see a room full of elves, but I kind of feel like they're going to cheat us. But then we get to see it. And I was like, all right, great choice. I'm glad, because I don't really know how you do this scene and not, somehow show the room. Because it felt like there was a point where they were going to try and cut a corner, but they were like, no, we can't do that. We have to have a reaction shot, or at least a view from the elves or that kind of thing, so we can see what we're dealing with. So I'm
going to interject again. I'll pause the timer. I agree with you, Tom. It felt like they were building up to that, right? Like you didn't get to see him fly off in the sleigh. You didn't see, all this magical stuff that we think of when we think of Santa Claus. Right. And it kind of made you want to see more, and they slowly added more and more of his world as the film went on.
Well, and you didn't. I think that buildup was, even building up to the fantastical part, that you weren't entirely sure. Like, they really built a realistic world as they built up to that because you really didn't know he got shot. Was that going to be it? Like, they never really alluded to this fantastical thing that they were going for yet.
Well, they did a
good
little
job.
bit.
They did.
He got shot with the shotgun on Christmas, and he was almost healed up like 3 days later. So there was a little tease that he heals a little bit faster than.
Yeah, he actually says it will heal in the usual way.
Yep, and
I thought that was like a nod to, like, okay, he's got some kind of.
Yeah, he's powers. Fantastical, but he's not like instant heal magic or whatever. I don't know. I thought the way they handled that, like Tom said, was well done.
Yeah, Tom mentioned earlier that Fatman might make his Christmas rotation, but for me, I'm not sure that either of these are ones that I want to revisit. They didn't feel very Christmassy to me. They didn't, and I'm okay with it being kind of a different take on the whole Christmas genre. But I don't know, like, are these movies that you guys would revisit? Are they ones that you would be like look forward to watching again?
So I think I'm most likely to show Krampus to someone, to show them the cool character designs. Or I would show Fatman to everyone and be like, look, this could have been a 9 out of 10 movie.
And I watched Krampus last year when actually I think it was Gabe who recommended it or had saw the trailer and said something about it. And I was like, oh, what is this? And I went and watched the trailer. I was like, this looks actually pretty good. So this is probably the third time that I've seen it. So I would say that, yes, it would be something I would watch again because I enjoyed it even this time.
Yeah, and it's not like I didn't enjoy these, but I just
no, I wasn't.
I just don't know if they're the kind of movies that I want to like revisit. Like they don't give me like this. I don't know. Maybe I'm too.
Are you looking for a holiday feel? Because they're not that.
Yeah, no, they're not. And I'm okay with that. I generally like kind of dark movies. And things are a little twisted from the norm, but I'm not sure that these were necessarily the movies I'd want to go back to, especially during the holidays. I don't know. It's not like I didn't enjoy them, but
it's funny because part of that too is there's no shortage of movies I need to watch between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it gets a little thicker each year. Right. So. I think that's another problem too. Is I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, so when am I going to watch Such a Wonderful Life? When am I going to watch Love Actually? When am I going to watch Elf 14 times?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, they are. I enjoyed watching them. I actually enjoyed them much more than I expected to.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I enjoyed them enough to go back to them repeatedly. Like if somebody said, hey, let's watch Krampus, I'm like, okay, fine. And every movie I've ever watched, I end up, if I watch it again, I end up catching something different the next time, or I get, a different feel from it. Maybe the tone changes based on the current, social or political environment or something. But I'm not sure if it's one I would go back to, either of these. I'm not sure if I would go back to them regularly. So.
That's a good point.
Are you guys done? Are you done? Is there?
I'm
anything
good,
you'd like
man.
to
Let's score this fucker.
Yeah, I'm satisfied.
Oh, right. I always try to leave you satisfied, Kyle. Tom.
4 for 4 on the Fat Man for me.
Okay, Kyle.
We talk about rewatchability. I think there are rewatchable moments in both of these movies. For me, Krampus really nails it with the character design, and that's something I would probably want to show somebody. Be like, look how cool this is, or how well this was done. And I love to champion when people do actual practical effects, because that's so rare these days. But overall, when you look at the final, what's on the screen, I think these movies both represent missed opportunities. But if you have to score them against each other, I think Fat Man is better.
Okay. Not the way I thought you were going, Gabe.
No, me either. I think I'm going to go with Krampus in the overall category.
Oh, Andrew.
Fat Man. I'm not even going to back it up. Like, it's just a better movie. Krampus was garbage.
All right.
That's a little rough.
Let me know. I'll let you know how I really feel at the end.
Yes. During your dissertation. Principal photography for Fat Man occurred in Ottawa Valley, Ontario, and Quebec, Canada, in the towns of Carrollton Place and Mississippi Mills in February of 2020.
I just like to point out that if you ever make an animated comedy where a teacher becomes the principal, calling him principal photography would be pretty funny. If he was a photography
That's pretty good.
professor.
I like that. The early shots of the other houses in the neighborhood are all digital, and they took that opportunity to design some of them after famous houses from the 80s movies. Similarly, the film features some subliminal imagery, and they added secret occult imagery into Krampus. The visible breath in the cold exteriors was done digitally, but a major component of it involved filming real people in freezers, reading dialogue for the scenes. Their breath was then isolated and added optically into the shots.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And one last thing, 95% of Krampus was shot on a soundstage.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's all one big
So I worked years and years ago. I worked on a movie, a Hallmark Hall of Fame movie, and we were shooting in November, but the movie wasn't really supposed to be that late in the year. And the director really hated seeing the actor's breath on screen. And so the actors, he would make the actors like, it was November and it was freezing cold, and he would make them suck on ice cubes so that the temperature of their mouth was closer to the temperature of the air, and you wouldn't catch their breath on the screen. And I always remember that. He was really adamant that we not get their breath on it. And now people go through a whole bunch of trouble to add it in digitally.
Right.
It's like
really
obvious
crazy
when they do it.
Yeah, it is usually pretty obvious. Yeah.
I thought it looked
Is it
pretty
just
good in
me-
Krampus.
Better.
Yeah. Is it just because then it becomes almost impossible to dub them?
That could
Right,
be.
because you could tell the syllables or the words would be different.
Right? That could be.
Because otherwise, who cares?
It
Like,
could
that's
be
real.
also
Well,
the
yeah,
director
I mean,
losing their shit.
and I guess if it's the kind of thing where, I think we were shooting at a time that was a little bit later. This production had been moved. They got in trouble. It was in an Amish community, and they got in trouble with this Amish community in in Philadelphia, and they had to move the whole production to Kelowna, Iowa. And I think they were shooting later in the year than they had planned. And so they were really trying to not make it look like it wasn't cold.
Oh, gotcha. So,
if it is cold, well, and then, if they're shooting a lot of this stuff on a soundstage, are they going to ever be able to get it cold enough in there to make it so that you actually see their breath?
Have to be.
Probably not, but you want to make it feel like believable, so you have to add that breath in later. I don't know. It just seems crazy to me that the trouble that they go through for one extreme or the other.
It's really obvious when they do it, and it looks normally pretty bad. I've seen very few artificial breaths that actually fit well with humans. Like when they do it with animated characters and things like that, it's not as obvious, but when they try to do it with a human, it just never looks right. There's just something about it that just is wrong. It just always looks funny to me.
All right, let's move on to recommendations for this month. We'll start with Kyle.
I hope I'm not taking anybody's recommendation. If I am, I apologize. But I recommend a movie done by one of the directors of these films, and that is the Halloween film Trick or Treat. It is a lot of fun. It's kind of a vignette. What do you call that type of movie? Anthology. It's an anthology film based around Halloween night, tied together by one main kind of slasher creepy character. And it's surprising. It's really kind of original and different, and I think it looks really cool. So if you have a hankering for a different horror movie, slightly out of the ordinary, check out Trick or Treat.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. Gabe?
Well, yeah. I would like to be able to recommend a movie that's in the genre or has similar elements, but I can't do that this month. I'm going to recommend a movie called 1 Year in Champagne. Excuse me. And it's a documentary about making champagne in the Champagne region of France and what they have to go through following all the rules and dealing with the odd weather in that region. And it's really kind of an interesting look into winemaking, especially sparkling wine. And so Jill and I watched that recently, and I enjoyed it a lot. So I would recommend 1 Year in Champagne.
All right.
Isn't all champagne made in Champagne?
It can only be called champagne
if it's made in
if it's
Champagne.
made in that region,
Illinois.
Yeah. Otherwise it's just your average everyday sparkling.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Andrew, stop playing with fake food, Andrew.
I'm going straight out for just a Christmas movie because I don't really know, and I hope no one's recommended this before, but it is probably one of my favorite Christmas movies that I watched recently. That while watching it for the very first time, and in subsequent watches, it just makes you feel like a little kid again. It brings joy, and it makes you feel like that Christmas joy of a kid, and you just feel like a kid. I don't know how they do it, but it was just really fun, well done, and I enjoyed it. And that would be Rise of the Guardians. It's animated, it's by DreamWorks, and it's pretty fantastic. So that's my recommendation, is Rise of the Guardians.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Tom?
That's an excellent choice. Excellent choice. Well, you can't have Christmas without Robert Downey Jr., so I'm going to recommend a Robert Downey Jr. movie that has never been mentioned on this show, ever.
Are you
sure? I bet you guys know what I'm going to recommend, right? No?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to recommend the 1995 TV movie starring Robert Downey Jr., Leslie Nielsen, and Stockard Channing, Mr. Willoughby's Christmas Tree, that they did with the Muppets. It's a musical. It's a musical. So you're singing and dancing with the Muppets. It's not as good as Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but if you need another some more RDJ in your life at Christmas time, check out Mr. Willoughby's Christmas Tree. There's a couple different versions on YouTube. It's about half an hour. It's an amazing piece of TV history. You should really check it out.
Thanks, Tom. I really
Almost
thought
as
you were
scary as
going
Krampus.
with Back to School.
Back to School? No. It was Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man 3, and then I was like, oh yeah, Mr. Willoughby's Christmas Tree, the third part of the RDJ Christmas trilogy.
All right. Well, mine is a movie that I don't believe has been recommended. I enjoyed this series. I guess there's only been 2 in the series so far. But Amanda, I love going to a movie that she's excited to watch. Because usually, she's like, oh boy, okay, here we go, another Michael Bay movie. But she was thoroughly looking forward to this film, and I think it's great. It's directed by Peyton Reed, written by Chris McKenna, Eric Summers, and Paul Rudd. It stars Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, and Michael Pena. Try saying that 3 times. But most importantly, it also has Walton Goggins in it. It's Ant-Man and the Wasp. I really enjoy that movie. All right, let's poke the monkey. Find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner by decision is Fatman!
Rise of the Guardians isn't a repeat?
I think
I've only gone back the last 2 years.
Oh, okay.
That's why I
think
went with
Tosh
Ant-Man
recommended
and the
Trick or
Wasp.
Treat at one point.
He may have.
That's possible.
Yeah,
but
he
that
was
would've been
he was
years
on
ago.
he was on the Halloween show. So
Yeah, he was always on the Halloween ones. Yeah.
can we whitewash him from the Wild website? Just screw it.
Yeah.
Did you say I said whitewash? He's albino.
You're right.
That's
He's
funny.
very white. He's already been whitewashed. You can't get any whiter than that.
We're going to genetically and internetally whitewash him.
Internetally.
Internetally.
Netly.
New word. I'm at internetally.com. That's mine.
So, I know that we're just kind of ending out, but, I just want to give a shout out to the amazing career and life of Stephen Sondheim that we lost, a couple weeks ago. And because he changed the world of music for Broadway, for movies, and was an amazing composer, an amazing lyricist, and music, the cliche is the day the music died, and he definitely fits that because he was fantastic for what he did and his talent. So
Yeah, he's an absolute titan of that genre.
He is. So
Well, and not very well known outside of Iowa, but Iowa lost one of its own champions of filmmaking a couple weeks ago. And, I don't want to give a shout out, but kind of a in memoriam of Joe Shirata. He was hair and makeup on a lot of the films that I worked on. If you look back over his lifetime, the man lived like 6 lives. He was a Vietnam recon sniper during the Vietnamese War.
wow.
Marine, but during Vietnam. He knew Vidal Sassoon very well. They were good friends. He played professional football. He was a race car driver. He flew planes, RC planes. He also started one of the first hair salons in Iowa that actually catered to men and women, which I didn't know about.
I didn't know any about this about Joe.
Yeah. Joe was a fantastic man. If you ever met him, you were instantly a friend. He was a dear, dear friend of mine of, unfortunately, only 9 years, but they were 9 years filled with a lot of laughter and a lot of love. So, if you guys get a chance, check out on IMDb Joe Shirata's filmography. He actually started writing and directing a couple films towards the end of his life. So if you guys get a chance, maybe send some love his way by honoring his memory. He was always so proud of the work that he did on a lot of the films that are on his IMDb page.
And Mike, maybe can you spell that for people so that they know?
Oh boy,
how to get there? Yeah.
Did you hear me butcher Evangeline Lilly's?
I have.
It's SCIORROTTA. Is that right?
Yeah, 2 R's, 2 T's.
Yep.
Yep.
So Joe Shirata, that's been very tough the last few weeks for me. But Joe would have loved the fact that we mentioned him on our little podcast. All right, let's end this on an up note. We would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. If you like us, tell your friends. If you hate us, tell your enemies. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. For January, we head to the City of Angels to expose its sleaze and corruption. It's LA Confidential versus Chinatown.
Yeah.
I've been waiting 12 years for this.
And then February, we need another host. For Andrew, Gabe, Tom, Kyle, and myself, thanks for listening. Happy holidays. And go catch a flick.
Merry Christmas.
Kyle, I believe you have some numbers or something about recommendations.
Yeah, so I don't want to bust anybody's balls too bad, but I did go through the last 2 years and I ran a table on who recommended what. And what I mean by that is, what did we recommend, right? So in 2020, we were very good boys. We recommended a total of 70 things over 12 episodes, and 58 of them were movies. 7 of them were shows. 3 of them were anti-recommendations, which is we recommended movies you shouldn't watch. One time a movie got repeated. And then Tom is the outlier by recommending a podcast, Team Deacons, which he got 0 shit for. Later on in 2021, Kyle would get eviscerated for recommending a song. But I would like to, in Tom's defense, looking back at these numbers, I am by far the worst recommender, as I recommend things that are... I've made mild recommendations. I once recommended 20 years worth of movie trailers. One of the funniest ones, listening to it back, is it jogged my memory of it happening live, is when Gabe tried to recommend old stop motion Sinbad films. And Tom and I thought he was talking about Sinbad the actor. We were so confused when he finally said, "Oh yeah, the old stop motion ones," and we were like, "Holy shit!" Okay, because we both thought you meant House Guest, Jingle All the Way. Yeah, so we were. The
genie one he did.
That doesn't exist. Yeah,
that one. That was a great movie.
I want to see Jingle All the Way as stop motion.
Right. So I did also find that 5 times we recommended movies before we watched them for the show. Mike recommended Ford versus Ferrari a year ahead of time. Mike also recommended Time Cop 9 months before we reviewed it. And then Tom recommended Jojo Rabbit 3 months before we watched it for the show. I recommended 1917, but it was almost 2 years before we would do that. Gabe has my favorite, as he recommended The General 3 months before we watched it, because he watched it on accident. It was the wrong film, and then he recommended it. Up until I discovered my own problem, Andrew was the only one who'd repeated to a movie twice, but he had like 13 months between that. I recommended the same movie twice in 5 months, which is really shoddy. For sure, the worst.
I'm sure as you go back further, I will have recommended the same movie more than once.
I have a feeling my record is going to go downhill very quickly.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if I recommended The Maltese Falcon a third time years ago. So I wouldn't be surprised. But by far the worst film anyone recommended falls on me, as I recommended everyone watch Freddy Got Fingered.
Daddy, would you like some sausage?
Daddy wants some. So here are some notes that I made. Gabe recommended 2 shows that he hadn't even finished at the time, as well as the entire Sinbad stop motion series. He also recommended the Thriller music video and got 0 shit for it.
It's awesome.
No, I'm sure it is. But nobody cared when you recommended that, and nobody cared when Tom recommended the podcast. I recommended a song, and everything ground to a halt, and I got punished for it the next month.
My podcast recommendation was very movie centered.
Sure, it's movie centered. But it's not the right media.
I recommended a movie podcast on our movie podcast.
But Kyle, you have to
previous to that, no one had made a recommendation like that.
I believe
that was the first non-movie, non-show recommendation.
Keep digging. Keep digging.
No, I will.
Oh, yeah. No, Kyle, you must not be aware of Tom's long history of recommending books.
Twice. I did it
we
twice.
have given Tom tons of shit for recommending
I recommended books twice, and I got so much shit for it.
I want to point out
there yet.
that I believe Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, I recommend Dan Carlin. And
well, there you go.
I probably did it one other time.
I would also like to point out that the most uttered phrase during recommendations is Jill and I were watching, because Gabe is always talking about what him and his girlfriend are watching. So it's either my girlfriend and I are watching, or Jill and I have been watching. That happens
I said it this time too.
Yeah, that probably happens 80% of the recommendations over the last 2 years.
I don't watch anything on my own except these movies because she doesn't want to watch them.
No, yeah, same for me. Yeah. So to give myself shit, I recommended 2 decades worth of movie trailers, a song on a Lonely Island album, and gave 1 mild and 2 anti-recommendations. On top of that, I also recommended Freddy Got Fingered.
Also,
so if you want to give me shit, that's
did you hit the movies that were not even out yet that Tom and Kyle recommended?
Yes. So here's some interesting ones. In episode 83, Tom recommended Black Panther because it wasn't out yet, which I gave him shit for, and then promptly recommended Avengers: Infinity War, which I don't think came out for 6 months after that.
Yep.
But yeah.
I also recommended Knives Out. I recommended Knives Out the week before it came out.
Yes, you did. And then I recommended Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in episode 101, and then Tom recommended it again in episode 105. By far the best person at making recommendations is Andrew, as he almost always recommends a movie and only one movie, with the exception of when he doubled up on Young Guns and Young Guns 2. For whatever reason.
Well, you can't watch one without the other.
Right.
No, but the first show that Andrew was the guest host for Tosh, he recommended 4 things. One of them being a movie not to watch. And on episode 82, Tom recommended Atomic Blonde, I think, and then Gabe said, "No, don't watch that movie," and it became his anti-recommendation.
Thanks, Gabe.
I think
he then made the safest bet in the world by recommending The Dark Knight, which is probably like an 8.9 movie on IMDb. Oh, I guess Tom did recommend Yesterday twice, episode 103 and episode 114.
I recommended Yesterday twice.
Yes.
Shit.
But Tom, you also have what is my favorite recommendation that I have read in all of these. In episode 120, you recommended everyone watch the movie 28 Days, then watch 28 Days Later and pretend Sandra Bullock becomes Cillian Murphy. Which was by far my favorite recommendation of all the things I listened to.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.